Guts. Guts is basically the embodiment of pain and tragedy. Betrayed by the man he deeply trusted, forced to watch his comrades slaughtered in a demonic ritual, and powerless as the woman he loves is violated before his eyes. His life has been nothing short of cruel. On top of that, he's cursed with a brand that constantly draws vengeful spirits to him, leaving him in an endless fight for survival. His path is soaked in rage, revenge, and violence, with every battle leaving him scarred and broken. But no wound to his body compares to the torment weighing on his heart, betrayal, lost love, and the endless thirst for vengeance. And the tragedy didn't start with the Band of the Hawk. His childhood was already a nightmare. The scars from those early years only grew deeper, shaping him into the man forever haunted by both his past and his fate. Guts came into the world in the most brutal way imaginable. He was born from the corpse of his hanged mother under a tree, left to die in blood and afterbirth. A passing mercenary group, led by a man named Gambino, found the scene and assumed the baby was already dead. When the child cried, everyone was stunned. One of the mercenaries, a woman named Chise, immediately took him in. Gambino didn't object, letting his lover raise the child, though many in the group thought his birth was a bad omen. 3 years later, Chise died of the plague, leaving him completely alone. By the time he was 6, he was already tagging along with the mercenaries, carrying Gambino's weapons in battle. His first lesson was harsh. Gambino struck him in the face with a spear shaft for not switching out weapons fast enough. Soon after, he began training him in swordplay. Since there was no children's sword around, he had to practice with a full-size blade. Despite the weight and suffering some cuts along the way, he managed to graze Gambino's cheek. In rage, Gambino retaliated with a swipe that left a deep gash across his nose. That night, the boy slept while clutching his sword for comfort. Gambino gave him ointment for his wound, which Guts assumed was his way of easing his own guilt. At 9 years old, Guts was put on the front lines. During a castle raid, he struggled against a larger opponent but managed his first kill. Gambino saved him from being taken out from behind, and after the raid, Guts handed Gambino the earnings he received. In return, Gambino tossed him a coin as a reward. That night, everything changed. Another mercenary, Donovan, approached Gambino with a request. Later, Donovan entered Guts' tent. Despite fighting back, the boy was overpowered. He was devastated when Donovan revealed he had paid Gambino for permission to violate him. The next morning, he tried to confront Gambino, but his foster father acted as though nothing happened. Too shaken to press the issue, Guts smashed a water barrel in anger, unable to ask the question directly. Later, during a battle in the forest, Guts killed Donovan with a crossbow and sword, demanding to know who betrayed him. Donovan died before answering. After the fight, Gambino lost a leg in an explosion, and though medics tended to him, his days as a fighter were over. Guts stayed by his side, often watching Gambino call out for Chise in his sleep. 2 years passed. Guts grew stronger, skilled enough to defeat enemies much bigger than himself. After killing a general, he visited Gambino, only to be told to fetch dog meat for the dog Gambino has since befriended. The lack of recognition cut deep. Later that night, Gambino stormed into his tent, drunk and in rage. He revealed that he always had blamed Guts for Chise's death and for his own misfortune. He also admitted that he was the one who let Donovan have him. Gambino then tried to kill him, leaving Guts with no choice but to fight back. He drove his sword into Gambino's neck. As Gambino died, he called out for Chise one last time. The falling body knocked over a candle, setting the tent on fire. The mercenaries quickly assumed the worst, that Guts murdered Gambino in cold blood. They cursed him for bringing misfortune and chased him down. During his escape, he was shot in the back with a crossbow bolt and fell into shallow water below a cliff. Believing he had died, the mercenaries left, but he survived, waking up under the night sky with no idea where to go. Surrounded by wolves, he almost gave up, but his body instinctively fought back. After fending them off, he collapsed and was later found by another band of mercenaries. He grew up with them and became hardened by endless battles. Killing became nothing more than survival, and he lacked any real sense of purpose. By the time he was a teenager, he left to live as a lone mercenary, wandering from fight to fight until he eventually met the Band of the Hawk. Even after joining them, his past never left him. His dreams were filled with memories of Gambino and the guilt of killing him. Any touch reminded him of Donovan that left him uneasy around others. Even when he was with Casca, those memories forced themselves back, to the point to where he nearly choked her in a haze of trauma. His childhood scars followed him no matter how far he went. The Elric brothers. Edward Elric and his younger brother Alphonse entered the story as a formidable pair operating within the state military. Edward serves as the state alchemist, known by the title Full Metal, bearing a striking automail prosthetic that replaces his right arm, while Alphonse's entire being is encased with a massive suit of steel armor. At first glance, their metal look seems like style points, but it's actually the result of a devastating past. Their bodies are a constant reminder of the price they paid for one tragic mistake, carrying with them a history marked by loss and regret. Their early years were quiet and happy enough until their father walked out, leaving his wife and 2 sons behind. Edward and Alphonse and their mother lived peacefully in the countryside, and the boys quickly showed an incredible gift for alchemy. Their mom was overjoyed, but their time together didn't last. In 1904, she fell ill and passed away, leaving the 2 brothers orphaned. Even while mourning, Edward swore to Alphonse that they'd find a way to bring their mother back. The 2 began teaching themselves alchemy, with support from their friend Winry Rockbill and her grandmother Panako. For all their progress, they hit a wall as self-taught alchemists, and that's when Izumi Curtis entered their life. She agreed to take them on as apprentices, but only if they survived a test first. Izumi dropped them on Yak Island and told them to last a month without using alchemy. At the end, they'd have to explain the meaning of one is all is one. The month was tough. They learned to hunt, forage, and defend themselves, even fending off attacks from Mason, a man disguised as a wild figure at Izumi's request. In time, Edward figured out the lesson. Humans are just one small piece of the world, but the world can't exist without its many small pieces. With the answer complete, Izumi began their training. For 5 months, the brothers went through grueling lessons in both alchemy and martial arts, growing in strength and knowledge. But Izumi was clear on one rule: death can't be reversed. Accepting that truth was essential. The lessons stuck in theory, but not in practice. Once back in their hometown, the brothers carried out their plan anyway. They studied human transmutation, a forbidden technique, and built a transmutation circle to bring their mother back. They gathered the necessary ingredients for a human body, added their blood, and performed the ritual. It went horribly wrong. Both were dragged into the gate. Edward met the being called Truth, who took his left leg in exchange for access to the gate's knowledge. He returned to find Alphonse gone, and their muddy's body a deformed, short-lived mass of organs. Now crippled and desperate, he sacrificed his right arm to bring Al back, binding his brother's soul to a suit of armor lying near with a blood wound before collapsing. Al carried him to the Rockbell home, where Winry and Pinnacle saved his life with emergency surgery. Edward sank into despair until Colonel Roy Mustang of the state military arrived on a tip about state alchemist candidates. Mustang heard what happened and told him to consider becoming a state alchemist, a path that could one day restore what was lost. Determined to make things right for his brother, he asked Winry and Pinnacle to give him automale limbs. He pushed through the painful surgery and recovery in just 1 year instead of 3, saying Al had it worse. By the fall of 1911, he was ready. At 12, he traveled with Mustang to Central to take the state alchemist exam. After breezing through the written test and shocking everyone with his alchemy skills, especially his ability to transmutate without a circle, he earned his certification and the title of Full Metal Alchemist. On October 3rd, he and Al left their hometown for good. Edward burned down their family home, saying it was the only way to make sure they wouldn't turn back. From then on, the brothers began their journey to find the Philosopher's Stone, the one thing that could help them restore their bodies.
Gamer Sups is an energy and nootropic formula designed to be a healthier, cheaper, and more effective beverage over energy drinks for gamers or the modern anime weeb on the go. Its blend of essential vitamins, caffeine, and nootropics provide a consistent boost with no jitters and no crash. It has 0 sugar, less than 1 carb, and less than 1 calorie per serving, so it's keto and diabetic safe. Plus, there's sugar-free options. I personally drink it all the time to be able to grind out these straight-to-the-point and informative videos for you guys, and they'll likely be the only sponsor you'll ever see on this channel. So help the channel stay mostly sponsor-free by clicking the link in our description, picking from the many tasty and uniquely named flavors on the website, and use our code ANIMEX at checkout to save 10% on your order. It would be a huge help for us. Also, pick yourself up a aesthetically interesting waifu cup while you're at it too. They're collectible. But anyway.
Gyro. Unlike Guts and the Elric brothers, Gyro wasn't even a main character in Hunter x Hunter. He showed up briefly in the manga and anime during the first part of the Chimera Ant arc. We never even got to see his actual face. Most of the time he just appeared as a black silhouette, and later on he was wearing this huge downcoat with his face completely hidden. So how does this mysterious guy who barely got any screen time and kept his face covered manage to earn a spot on this list? Well, this is exactly what makes Hunter x Hunter so damn good. We first got to know Gyro as the founder and king of NGL, before the Chimera Ants completely wrecked the place. His childhood was absolutely brutal. He grew up in a construction camp where he learned to mix concrete and lay bricks before he could even speak properly. His father was this quiet, distant guy who Gyro looked up to like he was some kind of god, even though the man spent most of his days completely wasted and beat him senseless for the smallest things. After coming back from work, Gyro got stuck on the top bunk of his bed and couldn't go outside except for when he needed to use the communal bathroom during the day. Once 9 p.m. hit, he was basically locked inside. His father kept drilling this phrase into his head, "Don't ever make trouble for anyone," and despite all the abuse, Gyro actually treasured those words and genuinely believed that his father loved him. There were two things that kept his faith alive. First, he thought his dad took care of him whenever he nearly died from some illness at age 5. Second, his father never told him to get lost or leave, which made him feel pretty good about their relationship. But everything went to hell when he turned 12. Some guys started making fun of his father, and he completely lost it. He went after the guy and got beaten up pretty badly. That's when the guy revealed two devastating truths that destroyed everything he believed in. First, his father never actually took care of him when he was sick. It was the old neighbor lady next door who did that while his dad was off getting drunk as usual. Second, his father had told people that he didn't care whether Gyro lived or died. The worst part came when his father actually walked past the two boys, saw what was happening, looked the other way, and just walked off like nothing mattered. That moment broke something inside him. He realized that his life meant absolutely nothing to the universe, that he was nobody, just another insignificant person taking up space. Finding out that his father's teachings were complete lies and that the man never cared about him at all finally pushed him over the edge. Not long after that revelation, Gyro grabbed a hammer, smashed his drunk father's skull in, stole all his money, and bolted from the camp. Somewhere around this time, he developed the D2 drug. The whole point of this stuff was to spread evil and destroy other people's lives because he had come to hate all of humanity with every fiber of his being. 9 years later, he formed NGL, and it took another 9 years for it to become an official nation. Under his rule, the country became this weird neo-Luddite society that rejected pretty much all modern technology. They banned anything made from synthetic materials from entering their borders. If anyone tried smuggling in tech, modern medicine, or weapons, they either got thrown in prison or executed. People communicated through old-school letters and got around on horses. Getting into the country was a nightmare. You had to go through this intense full-body examination, get x-rayed, have an ultrasound done. Before the Chimera ants showed up, there was this epidemic going around, but the people refused to let foreign doctors in because they wanted to stay pristine. When the Chimera ants finally invaded NGL, they killed Gyro and his soldiers, and the Queen ate them all. Normally, when humans get devoured by the Queen, they get reborn as Chimera ants and become totally obedient to her through their natural instincts. But one of the newly born Chimera ant soldiers had his own will and straight up rejected the Queen's orders. That soldier was Gyro after his rebirth. Because of his incredibly strong will and his unbreakable pride as a king, he kept all his human memories, completely ignored the Queen's commands, and left the NGO hive. He was determined to build his own kingdom again. We see him walking down the street wearing this dark overcoat with his hood pulled up. The really scary part is that now he has powers he never possessed when he was human. Wolfgang Grimmer. Wolfgang Grimmer is often considered one of the best side characters in anime and manga. On the surface, he's a kind, generous freelance journalist who always looks out for others, especially kids. He believes people have goodness in them and genuinely wants to help create better futures. He carries himself with a modest and cheerful outlook, finding joy in the little things. But that warm personality hides a much darker past. Not much is known about his real family since he can't remember them. It's believed he was the child of an East German couple who were later arrested as criminals. After that, he was placed in Kinderheim 511, an orphanage infamous for its cruel goal of shaping children into perfect soldiers through psychological experiments and brainwashing. He went through heavy abuse there and lost his ability to feel emotions like happiness, sorrow, or love. His memories of the place are fragmented, flashes of musty beds, stained ceilings, and dim corridors. The one thing he remembers clearly is a cartoon he saw there titled The Magnificent Steiner. It became so important to him that he made it part of his own identity. He even channels its main hero as an alternate personality, whenever he's enraged or in danger, allowing him to unleash extreme violence. The irony is that he remembers every episode perfectly except the last one, which always leaves him unsettled. At 14, he left Kinderheim and was placed in a foster family, given the new name Wolfgang Grimmer. But even then, his life was still tightly controlled. His parents were just people playing roles, and he was never allowed outside his neighborhood. He attended a special school for spy training, where he mastered multiple languages like Spanish, English, Russian, and French. Learning emotions, though, was far harder than learning languages. In his 20s, while working as a spy disguised as a journalist, a woman in his workplace confessed her love for him. He couldn't feel love, but he agreed to marry her because it made sense for his cover. They had a son together, and for a while, they lived what looked like a happy life. Despite his emotional emptiness, he tried his best to play the role of a husband and father, but tragedy struck when his son suddenly died from an undiagnosed condition. He tried desperately to save him, but failed. What broke everything wasn't just the loss, but his inability to feel grief. He didn't know how he was supposed to react, and his wife, devastated by his coldness, left him, accusing him of having no heart. He continued his work as a spy until the Berlin Wall fell, after which he shifted to freelance journalism. His focus turned to exposing human rights abuses in the Soviet Union, along with researching the secrets of Kinderheim 511. His past experiences likely fueled this mission. In 1998, after helping Dr. Tenma, a man falsely accused of serial killings, cross the German-Czech border, he finally tracked down the director of Kinderheim 511 in Prague. But before he could get any real answers, the director was mortally wounded by a mysterious blonde woman. With his dying breath, the director handed him a key to a bank safe containing crucial information about something called the Monster's Afterimage. From there, Grimmer became deeply involved in Tenma's pursuit of Johann, the enigmatic young man behind a wave of terror across Europe. His alternate self, the magnificent Steiner, emerges at critical moments. This side of him takes over when he's in life-threatening danger, unleashing violence he otherwise keeps buried. It's not something he can control, and when it happens, he often doesn't fully remember what he's done, but it becomes one of his most important tools in surviving the chaos surrounding Johann. Eventually, his path leads him to Ruinheim, where he ends up severely injured due to Johann's large-scale manipulations, leading to a bloodbath. In his final moments, something remarkable happens. For the first time in his life, he genuinely feels emotion, and how it feels to feel human again. Hyakkimaru. Being born from a corpse sounds pretty horrific, but wait until you hear about Hyakkimaru's entrance into the world. In Japan's Warring States period, the town of Ishikawa was getting absolutely wrecked by famines and plagues. People were literally dying left and right, barely hanging on to life. The ruler, Daigo Kagemitsu, was watching his domain crumble and decided to make the ultimate desperate move. He struck a deal with the 12 demons hanging out in the Hall of Hell. Lord Daigo was ready to walk the path of pure evil if it meant saving his town and gaining power. His offer to these demons was simple. Everything he had was on the table. Years pass, and when his first son finally arrives, those demons come to collect their payment. The baby is born completely messed up. No limbs, no facial features, no skin, just a living, breathing nightmare. Instead of being horrified like any normal parent would be, Daigo was actually thrilled. He saw his son's horrific condition and got excited because it meant that the deal was sealed. The man literally celebrated while ordering the old midwife to get rid of the disfigured baby. His wife begged to keep her child, but Daigo shut that down fast. He told her to forget they ever had that son and to start working on making another kid soon. The old midwife was about to toss the baby into the river when something changed in her mind. She saw this tiny broken thing fighting to survive and couldn't go through with it. Instead, she spotted a boat nearby and placed the baby inside, giving the kid a shot at life against impossible odds. That compassionate act cost her everything though. A demon, drawn to the cursed child's presence, killed the old midwife. But before he could reach the boat, a blind elderly monk showed up and took the demon down. The boat with the cursed baby drifted down the river, and absolutely no one knew that this child had survived. Time moves on, and a doctor named Jukai was walking near a river when he tripped and discovered the boat carrying an infant. He was blown away that this baby had managed to survive such brutal conditions, so he took the child in and raised him as his own. Jukai became the father this kid never had, creating prosthetics to replace his missing limbs, a mask to hide his hollow face, and even giving him his own name, Hyakkimaru. As the boy grew up and had his first encounter with a demon, Jukai realized he couldn't shield him from the world forever, so he started teaching him swordsmanship. A few years later, after Hyakkimaru fought another demon and actually got his right leg back, Jukai connected the dots. He figured out that his adopted son's body parts and limbs had been stolen by demons through some unknown agreement. The pieces were starting to fall into place. When Hyakkimaru hit adolescence, he made a life-changing decision. He was going to hunt down all 12 demons and take back every single piece of his body they had stolen. Jukai supported this mission by installing a pair of swords inside his artificial arms. Before they parted ways, Jukai gave him a protective talisman and one final hug. 16 years has passed since Hyakkimaru's birth, and Ishikawa was absolutely flourishing. Daigo's second son, Tohomaru, was returning from a hunting trip, living the good life, but Daigo's wife couldn't shake the memory of her first son. The guilt and loss still ate at her. Meanwhile, Hyakkimaru was out there grinding through his journey when he crossed paths with Dororo, a young petty thief who was getting beat up. After Hyakkimaru saved her, Dororo witnessed something incredible. The masked Ronin's skin regenerated after he defeated a sludge-like demon. This strange Roman couldn't see, hear, or talk, but he was clearly something special. Dororo decided to tag along, and throughout their adventures, Hyakkimaru kept battling demons and slowly reclaiming his body parts and senses, piece by piece. It was a brutal, grinding process that tested him at every turn. When he and Dororo finally reached Ishikawa, everything started clicking into place. As he reclaimed more of his body, the town began falling back into the same hardships from before. The prosperity was directly tied to his suffering. Things got real when a destitute woman in the streets spotted them and completely panicked, recognizing Hyakkimaru as the demon child from years ago. Word got back to Daigo, who started receiving reports about a blind man covered in prosthetics who hunted demons for a living. The demon statue revealed the truth that Daigo probably didn't want to hear. His first son was alive and actively recovering what had been taken from him. When father and son finally met face to face, Daigo confirmed his worst fears. This was indeed the child of the devil, and he ordered his men to kill him on the spot. Hyakkimaru managed to escape and later broke into Daigo's home, where he encountered his mother. She immediately recognized him as her son, but the guards attacked before they could have any real reunion. He was forced to flee again. By this point, Tohomaru had learned the devastating truth about having an older brother. Instead of feeling sympathy, he begged his father to keep trying to kill Hyakkimaru. His reasoning was brutal but understandable. They needed to save the people of Ishikawa, even if it meant sacrificing family. During the massive battle at Banmon, the two brothers finally faced off. Hyakkimaru wounded Tohomaru in the eye before leaving to confront the fox demon that had disappeared into the Banmon wall. The family destruction was reaching its peak. His mother arrived during the chaos and spoke to him directly. She expressed her deep regret and dismay about having sacrificed him for their people's welfare. She couldn't take away his burden, but she wanted to share it somehow. In a desperate act, she stabbed herself, hoping to offer something to the demons. The Banmon wall started shaking violently and collapsed completely. Daigo had no choice but to withdraw his troops, and after all the destruction and chaos settled, Dororo and Hyakkimaru set off on their journey once again. After learning the complete truth from his mother about what had happened to him, Hyakkimaru made a dark vow. He was going to kill his own father in retribution for what was done to him. Even his younger brother wasn't safe from his revenge. He was determined to regain every single missing body part, no matter the cost to his family or the people of Ishikawa. Nico Robin. One Piece also has its own version of the Devil Child, but for completely different reasons than Hyakkimaru. Nico Robin is the archaeologist of the Straw Hat Pirates and became the 7th crew member after the Arabasta arc. While every Straw Hat member has a heartbreaking backstory that could earn a spot on this list, Robin's story absolutely takes the crown. She was born 30 years ago on the island of Ohara to Nico Olivia and an unnamed father, coming from a long line of archaeologists. When Robin was just 2, her mother left to sea in pursuit of the true history, promising to honor her husband's dream by studying poneglyphs. That left Robin in the care of her uncle Orin and his wife, Roji. Her home life was harsh. Roji constantly berated and beat her, making it clear she wasn't welcome. She wasn't allowed to join family celebrations, not even her cousin Mizuiro's birthday. The powers of her Hanahana no Mi didn't help her situation. Other kids feared her, their parents warned them to stay away, and insults like demon became the norm. The only place she found acceptance was at the Tree of Knowledge, where Professor Clover and the scholars welcomed her curiosity. By the age of 8, she had passed an archaeology exam and was officially recognized as a scholar, but when she openly declared her intent to study the unrecorded history of the world like her mother, Clover scolded her and warned that she'd lose access to the library if she kept prying into forbidden research. Hurt, Robin ran to the coast, where she met Jaguar D. Saul, a giant stranded on the beach. The two quickly bonded, and she visited him daily as he worked on a raft, but the peace didn't last. Saul eventually realized he had washed up on Ohara and that Robin was Olivia's daughter. He told her the Marines were preparing to destroy the island because the scholars were studying the poneglyphs. Around this time, Olivia escaped from a marine ship and returned to Ohara, thanks to Saul's earlier help. She revealed that her fellow archaeologists had been slaughtered, and the Marines were closing in on Ohara. Even with the danger, the scholars refused to leave, choosing instead to protect their research and the Tree of Knowledge. When CP9 agents landed, Olivia tried to confront Spandine, their director, but was quickly overpowered. Back at the Tree of Knowledge, Clover tried to get Robin to flee as the Marines closed in, but she stayed. Soon, CP9 dragged in a wounded Olivia, who immediately recognized her daughter upon hearing her name. CP9 also discovered the poneglyph hidden in the basement. Spandine gave the order for a buster call to wipe the scholars out, and Clover attempted to speak directly to the 5 elders through the Den Den Mushi. He revealed his theory that the government was hiding the truth about the Void Sentry, but before he could say more, he was silenced with a bullet to the chest. As the bombardment of Ohara began, Olivia and Robin reunited. Olivia begged Saul to protect her daughter, asking Robin to live on no matter what. Robin wanted to stay, but Olivia refused, saying she had unfinished work. Saul carried her towards the shore, but was soon targeted by marine battleships. In his rage at them nearly hitting Robin, he destroyed several ships before Vice Admiral Kuzan intercepted them. At the same time, Sakazuki destroyed the evacuation ship full of civilians just in case scholars had snuck aboard, horrifying Robin. Saul fought back, but was eventually frozen by Kuzan. Before being completely encased, he told Robin to escape, and reminded her she wasn't alone. Shaken but determined, she ran to the raft Saul had built, where Kuzan awaited her. Surprisingly, he spared her, curious about why Saul had risked everything for her. He warned that if she ever caused trouble, he'd personally come for her. He even created an ice path for her raft to escape the island. Robin left, trying to laugh through her tears as Ohara was burned to the ground, becoming its sole survivor. She was soon picked up by a passing ship, but the Marines quickly placed a bounty on her head. Spandine suggested to Sengoku that the government spread lies to frame her, claiming that she had destroyed 6 ships herself and was a dangerous child. They also painted the Ohara scholars as villains searching for ancient weapons to wipe out the world, twisting the truth to make Robin the Demon of Ohara. Rumors spread, turning her name into something feared, with people believing her very existence was a threat. Her bounty of 79 million made survival even harder. Townsfolk, bounty hunters, and even those who pretended to take her in constantly tried to betray her. At one point, an old farm woman handed her over to the government agents in exchange for money. Another time, a couple who seemed kind plotted to turn her in, forcing her to flee yet again. Hungry, hated, and always on the run, she scavenged for food, faced mob chases, and even considered ending her own life, but remembered the words of her mother and Saul. At just 8 years old, she joined her first pirate crew, but when the world government tracked them down, the crew assumed she betrayed them and turned on her. From then on, she wandered, taking small chances at work or shelter only to be rejected, beaten, or cursed as trouble. She survived in this lonely cycle for years. By 16, she had joined and betrayed an unnamed organization, and by 23, she managed to cross from West Blue into the Grand Line. At 24, she aligned herself with Crocodile, becoming the Baroque Works vice president under the codename Miss All Sunday. He needed her skill to read poneglyphs to track down Pluton, the ancient weapon said to be hidden in Arbasta. She stayed under his wing for 4 years, finally finding temporary stability while hiding from the government. But her time with Baroque Works eventually brought her face to face with the Straw Hat Pirates, the crew that would change her life forever. Ray. Every orphan in the Promised Neverland was destined for a grim fate, but none had a childhood as twisted as Ray's. Like the rest of the kids, he grew up at Grace Fieldhouse under the care of Isabella, the mama everyone adored. On the surface, it looked like a dream orphanage. Great food, clean clothes, plenty of learning, and a loving guardian. What none of the children knew was that the orphanage was actually a human farm, raising kids as livestock for demons under a deal known as the Promise. These farms disguised themselves as safe havens, with mothers raising children to be as bright and as healthy as possible. When they were adopted, they weren't going to families. They were being handed over to high-ranking demons to be eaten. Ray was one of the top students in Plant 3. He aced every exam, was an avid reader, and had the kind of sharp, skeptical personality that set him apart. Even though he kept a distant air, he cared deeply for Emma and Norman, and the 3 of them were considered the premium quality goods of Grace Field. What made him different from the others, though, was the fact that he knew the truth from the very beginning. Unlike the other kids, he'd never suffered childhood amnesia. He remembered everything: his time in the womb, having the transmitter stapled into his ear, infants being sorted into groups, and even the moment he was sent into Grace Field. He knew that he was born on January 15th, 2034 to Isabella through artificial insemination. As he grew older, he started noticing inconsistencies between his own memories and the life inside the house. Eventually, he pieced together the true purpose of the orphanage, the gates, the tests, and the markings on their necks, as well as the transmitters hidden in their ears. With that knowledge came guilt, nightmares, and crushing loneliness. He was the only child who understood where his siblings were going when they left, and had to live with it in silence. Depressed and sick of carrying the burden alone, he decided to take matters into his own hands. At one point, he cut open his own ear to break his transmitter, an act that caught Isabella's attention and sparked a deal between them. He agreed to become her spy in exchange for gifts, but those rewards were never just for himself. He used them to gather materials for her escape plan, creating devices and stockpiling fuel. His supposed loyalty to her was nothing more than a cover to play the long game against his enemy. On his 6th birthday, Isabella overheard him humming the same lullaby she once sang to her unborn child. That was when he confronted her with the truth that he had already pieced together, that he was her biological son. She confirmed it, and from that day on, their twisted arrangement as spy and handler began. While he never cared much for reading, he forced himself into the habit, not only to maintain his perfect scores, but to also consume every book in Grace Field before he turned 12. Knowledge was his weapon, and he intended to use it to prepare for escape. He continued refining his transmitter disabling device and plotting ways out. He even planned to use himself as a distraction when the time came, with the fuel he had collected meant to burn him alive as a final trump card. Because of their close ages and shared status as top students, he remained especially close to Emma and Norman. They shared small but warm moments, like talking through tin cans with a sick Norman, or Emma and Norman trying to pull him away from his books with silly faces. When Isabella announced that little Connie was getting adopted, the house lit up with smiles. Everyone was happy for her, everyone except Ray. While the kids celebrated Connie finding a new family, Ray knew exactly what that meant. Connie wasn't being adopted, she was being shipped out. Her lower test scores marked her as average quality livestock, the kind demons feed on. Anyone who didn't meet the bar, like Connie, was sent off earlier to feed lower ranking demons. That night, as Isabella prepared to escort Connie to the gate, Emma noticed Connie had forgotten her favorite toy. Ray took this as the perfect chance. He urged Emma and Norman to go return it, knowing they uncovered the truth for themselves. What they saw shattered everything they believed about their home. With Emma and Norman finally aware of the horrifying reality, Ray was ready to push forward with the escape plan, this time with all three of them in on it. The three even explored the gate together, unknowingly testing the boundaries of the prison they were trapped in. But everything shifted when Norman was shipped out, leaving him shaken. 2 months later, with his own shipment date approaching, he devised a final desperate plan. The night before he was to be taken, he sat alone in the dining hall, silently saying goodbye to the place he grew up. After confirming Emma's resolve to escape, he told her his plan. He would burn himself and the house down to distract Isabella, giving them the chance to flee during the chaos. But Emma slapped him. She refused to let him throw his life away. Instead, she and the others built a decoy out of meat and hair wrapped in his clothes. She also removed his tracker, ensuring Isabella would believe that he was the one burning inside the flames. The fire set off chaos. While Isabella tried to save the burning Ray, the older children used the distraction to escape the orphanage. The younger kids under 4 were left behind, since they weren't yet scheduled for harvest, but the group promised to come back for them one day. Ciel Phantomhive. Ciel Phantomhive was born on December 14, 1875 to Vincent and Rachel Phantomhive. He came into the world a few minutes after his twin brother, the true heir and the original Ciel Phantomhive. His older brother was expected to inherit the role of Earl and continue the family legacy. At first, he seemed fine with that future, until one outing changed everything. During a trip into town, Ciel confessed to his brother that he dreamed of leaving the manor one day and opening a toy shop in London. Not wanting to lose him, his brother told their parents he'd rather run that shop together than become the Earl. After a long talk with Vincent and Rachel, he had to accept his duty as heir, though not without reluctance. Years later, when the twins turned 10, the day began like any other birthday celebration. Ciel woke his older brother and gifted him one of the rabbit febs from their advent calendar. They exchanged birthday wishes, then headed downstairs where a fully decorated dining room and piles of presents were waiting. Their parents congratulated them and granted them the entire day off from studies. Together, they wandered through the manor until they reached the kitchen, only to be chased out by their butler, Tanaka, and the cooks, who wanted the cake to stay a surprise until the party. Tanaka sent them back to their room, promising he'd return at 6 to get them ready. The boys passed the time with games and eventually dozed off. When they woke, it was already 6, but Tanaka still hadn't shown up. Minutes turned into nearly an hour and unease started to settle in. His older brother decided to check things out but refused to let Ciel follow. Alone, he searched the manor and stumbled upon the corpses of their parents. He took the Phantomhive ring from their father's finger, a symbol of the title that he was supposed to inherit. Not long after, both brothers were captured during the attack on the manor. They were tagged, caged, and left to the mercy of human traffickers. His older brother, devastated by his own inability to protect him, called himself a failure. The twins clung to each other for comfort in the middle of their fear and despair. Later that night, his brother showed him the Phantomhive ring, swallowing it so no one could take it from them, assuring him that it would guide them home. The next day, their captors brought them to a mansion where they were bathed, dressed, and given food. Ciel thought that they had been rescued, but his brother wasn't convinced. Soon enough, the truth came out. Dressed up for what seemed like an event, the boys were led into a cathedral where a mass cult awaited them. To Ciel's horror, they weren't guests, they were sacrifices. The cult defiled and branded the twins, marking them for a ritual. From that day, their suffering only worsened. They were constantly violated, injected with unknown substances, and abused in ways meant to strip them of hope. Even so, being together kept their spirits alive. His older brother vowed again and again to protect him. That vow was broken against his will. A month later, the cult used his brother as a living sacrifice to summon a demon. Ciel could do nothing but watch as his brother was stabbed in the chest and killed. The ritual succeeded, but instead of serving the cultists, the summoned demon turned its attention to Ciel. Abandoned by any hope of divine rescue, he demanded a contract. He wanted the strength to take revenge on everyone who had destroyed his life. The cult tried to stop him, but it was too late. He and the demon formed a contract. When asked where he wanted the Ciel, Ciel told him he didn't care, as long as he received power beyond anyone else. Calling him greedy, the demon branded his right eye, burning it into a place with unbearable pain. He named the demon after his dog, who was also killed during the attack on their manor, Sebastian Michaelis. At his command, Sebastian massacred the cultists and retrieved the Phantomhive ring from his brother's body before burning the cathedral to the ground. From that day, the younger twin stepped into his brother's identity. The first stop was the Royal London Hospital, where his aunt worked. There, he reunited with Tanaka and arranged transport back to the ruined manor. Standing before the wreckage, he visited the family's graves, only to return and find Sebastian had already rebuilt the manor. With his new life set, he assumed the role of Earl of Phantomhive and the Queen's watchdog. He also launched the Phantom Corporation, turning his childhood dream into a reality by opening a toy company in London. Gaara. Gaara's story runs almost parallel to Naruto's, but while Naruto stumbled into rare moments of kindness that shaped his future, Gaara was dealt nothing but pain. Born in Sunagakure as the youngest of the three Sand siblings, he was born already carrying a burden. Before he was born, the one-tailed beast, Shukaku, was sealed inside him by Chiyo at the command of the fourth Kazekage, Rasa. The decision wasn't out of love, but necessity. The Wind Daimyo had slashed Suna's budget, and Rasa wanted a living weapon to protect the village. Tomura and Kankuro weren't compatible with Shukaku, but Gaara was. That made him the chosen vessel. The cost was devastating. His mother, Karua, died giving birth to him. With her last breath, she looked at her tiny premature son and promised to protect him always. From then on, he was raised in isolation. Rasa trained him, while Yashimaru, his maternal uncle, cared for him. Even with that support, his life was shaped by fear. Once he was allowed outside, he tried connecting with villagers. He offered kindness, small gestures to show he meant no harm, but the people of Suna saw only the beast inside him. Adults avoided him, children ran at the sight of him, and his attempts to reach out usually ended in accidents. His sand moving to protect him, sometimes hurt or even killed others. At 6 years old, confused about why he hurt people and why they feared him, he asked Yashimaru about pain. Yashimaru explained the difference between physical pain, which medicine could heal, and emotional pain, which can only be healed with love. He told Gaara he was loved, by his late mother, whose spirit supposedly controlled the sand protecting him, and by himself. Comforted, he tried once again to show kindness to others, only to be met with more hatred. One night, everything shattered. He was attacked by an Anbu, who turned out to be Yashimaru in disguise. Stunned, Gaara begged for an explanation. Yashimaru revealed that the mission came directly from Rasa and the Suna Council, who saw him as a failed experiment too dangerous to live. What broke him further was Yashimaru's insistence that it wasn't just an order. He claimed he volunteered. He said he always had hated Gaara for killing Karora, and that Karora herself had despised him. According to Yashimaru, even Gaara's name, meaning a self-loving carnage, was proof that Karora had cursed her son to bring ruin to Suna. After leaving those words, Yashimaru told him to die and triggered explosive tags. Gaara-san shielded him from the blast. Whether it was his mother's love or simply Shukaku's power, he no longer cared. Everything he believed in had been stripped away. Broken and alone, he embraced the meaning of his name. He decided to live only for himself, carving the kanji for love into his forehead as a symbol of self-dedication. Consumed by rage and grief, he lost control and transformed into Shukaku, lashing out at the village until Rasa stopped him with his gold dust. That wouldn't be the last time that Rasa tried to end his life. Over the years, he survived 5 more assassination attempts ordered by his own father. When it became clear that his son could not be killed, Rasa shifted his approach, molding him into the weapon Suna needed. Gaara grew into that role, mastering his powers and dedicating his life to destruction. With no bonds to tether him, he found meaning in killing, channeling all his pain into hate for the world. That path only changed after his defeat by Naruto Uzumaki. For the first time, he saw another Jinchuriki who had endured the same loneliness, but carved out a different future through bonds and friendship. Watching that, Gaara finally had someone worth emulating. Crona. Crona's introduction in Soul Eater already sets the tone for their entire story. Born the child of the witch Medusa Gorgon, they were never given the chance at a normal life. From the start, Medusa treated them less like a child and more like a subject for her twisted experiments. Before they could even form their own identity, Medusa carried out a blood transfusion using black blood, a substance that warps the mind with madness. To make things worse, she fused the demon sword Ragnarok into the black blood, forcing Crona into a permanent symbiotic relationship with the weapon. That meant that every part of their life was shaped by pain and control, from Ragnarok's constant bullying to Medusa's harsh punishments. As a toddler, they were made to kill small animals as part of training, a first step in conditioning them for the role Medusa wanted, a weapon of destruction. Every lesson was brutal. They were denied love, isolated from others, and made to feel worthless whenever they weren't cruel or strong enough. Medusa's care came in the form of shame, fear, and psychological abuse. Physical abuse is heavily implied too. Instead of family, they got experiments. Instead of comfort, they got orders. Medusa's goal was to mold them into someone who could one day become a Kishin, a corrupted soul powerful enough to merge with the original Kishin Asura and help bring ruin to the world. To push them towards that end, she gave them power, but it was never a gift. Every ounce of strength came with more terror, more instability, and more madness clawing at their mind. The damage shaped everything about how Crona interacted with the world, even after being rescued by Maka. They grew up anxious, fearful, and hesitant, like someone constantly bracing for the next blow. They avoided conflict whenever possible, froze when situations felt overwhelming, and struggled to deal with even simple day-to-day moments. Their fear wasn't just about monsters or battles. What terrified them most was human interaction. Talking to others, facing rejection, or simply being yelled at was enough to paralyze them. That's why they often muttered, "I don't know how to deal with this," when confronted with anything uncertain. Because of the abuse, they gravitated towards gentler people who felt safe, like Maka. In contrast, loud or imposing figures such as Sid frightened them immediately. This constant anxiety meant that even when they wanted to learn or connect, they gave up easily, convinced they couldn't handle things. In the anime, Crona eventually manages to break free from Medusa's grip and start moving towards a life of their own. It's a chance at freedom and healing, a glimpse at the person they could become if given real support. But in the manga, the story is far harsher. The years of conditioning proved too strong, and they ended up returning to Medusa. Under her control again, their body and mind were pushed past breaking, leaving them even more shattered than before. Crona's story is one of tragedy shaped by manipulation, abuse, and fear. Despite all the strength Medusa forced into them, what they truly lacked was something simple: the chance to be treated as a child instead of a tool. Czeslaw Meyer. Eternal life sounds glorious, but for Czeslaw Meyer, better known as Chez, it turned into a nightmare. Born around 1700 outside Lado Valentino, he came from a long line of alchemists with tie to the Avaro family. His grandfather even mentored Beg Garrett and Lebro Fermet Voralescu. By the time he was about 5, tragedy struck. His parents died in a carriage accident, leaving him an orphan and the technical head of the Meyer line. Fermet, who had just joined the workshop, stepped in as a guardian. Beg soon returned, bringing a girl named Niki, who quickly became like an older sister when she was hired to watch over him. In 1707, he tagged along with Fermet to a party at the Avaro estate, where he met Maiza Avaro and Jean-Pierre Accardo. The group left the party early, eventually joined by Beg, and headed to the third library to meet headmaster Dalton Strauss. Dalton shocked them all by ripping out his own throat to show his immortality. Beg shielded him from seeing the gruesome act. By 1709, the Meyer workshop relocated to Lado Valentino, away from the war front and closer to the city libraries. After Monica Campanella's death in 1710, Fermat took in her infant, and Chise happily treated the baby as family, believing it to be a child of Fermat's friend. Adjusting to city life was difficult for him though. By 1711, he struggled with strangers and distrusted the bustling city, now controlled by House Dormentaire. That year, while out with Fermat near the libraries, an explosion rocked the harbor. When they got back to the manor, they found Nikki, the infant, and Elmer C. Albatross waiting. Explosions continued for the next 10 days, striking Dormentaire facilities and aristocratic estates, and suspicion quickly fell on the Alchemists. One group of them, including Beg, Fermat, and Chise, arranged to escape aboard the ship Advena Advis. Before their departure, the Alchemists gathered in the catacombs of the Third Library. Dalton gave a speech, and during the Q&A, Maisa, Gretel Avaro, and Sylvie Luminaire confronted the frightened boy. Sylvie even tried cheering him up with fruit. When it was time to leave, Beg gave him a harmless sleeping drug, carried him on his back, and slipped through the waterways to the harbor, where the city was burning. Beg was forced onto the ship, still carrying the sleeping boy, while Maisa pushed ahead. Chise remained asleep through the chaos. The confrontation with Victor Talbot on the deck and the last-minute arrival of Elmer, Huey Lafayette, and Szilard Quatz. Once he woke up, he and Beg explored the ship, passing the time with games like hide-and-seek. Despite his age, he drank the Grand Panacea along with the others, becoming a complete immortal at 10 years old. After they reached the colonies, Beg and Fermat left town with him. It's unclear when Beg parted ways, but what followed was nothing short of horror. Fermat began torturing him under the guise of testing the limits of immortality. At first, he used tools. Later, he escalated to savage beatings and crueler methods. This torment went on for 2 centuries. Eventually, after Fermat seared his eyes with a hot poker, Chise devoured him. But that only replaced the physical pain with mental torment. Now he carried all of Fermat's twisted joy inside his head, living with memories that weren't his. He lost all faith in love and trust, convinced the world was built on deception. Terrified of anyone uncovering his fractured memories, he made it his mission to devour other immortals before they could do the same to him. With Beg gone from his life, he supported himself by selling explosives of his own design. On December 30th, 1931, he smuggled a prototype explosive onto the Flying Pussyfoot, planning to sell it to the Runarada family in New York. He intended to devour Beg and Maisa once he arrived, but the plan unraveled when the rail tracer punished him for endangering passengers. After failing to devour Maisa, Isaac and Miria playfully gifted him to Ennis as her little brother. He soon found himself living in an apartment with Ennis and Faro Prochidnezo as their roommate. By the 1970s, he and Maisa set out on a long road trip to track down the surviving immortals from 1711. They returned briefly around 1980 to attend Faro and Ennis's wedding. By 2000, they had located Niall and Sylvie, and later tracked down Elmer in a village in December of 2001. In 2002, they finally returned to New York. That summer, he joined Faro and Ennis on their honeymoon aboard the Entrance, a cruise liner hijacked by the mask makers on its way to Japan. The nightmare resurfaced when Fermat appeared in Kyoto. Upon realizing he was still alive, all Chise could do was scream. Ash Lynx. Aslan J. Callenreese, better known as Ash Lynx, leads a New York gang and finds himself stuck as the unwilling heir to the Corsican Mafia. He was born August 12, 1968 in Cape Cod, a peninsula sitting on the southern coast of Massachusetts in northern United States. His teenage mother was a young hippie from Boston with a wandering spirit who ditched him right after birth, leaving him with his father, Jim Callenreese. His mother died from a drug overdose before reaching adulthood, shortly after she left Cape Cod to return to her parents' home in Boston. Ash's maternal grandparents had forced their daughter to come back home without her newborn son Aslan, and they buried their teenage daughter in suburban Boston. His father handed over Ash's care to Griffith, his older half-brother, who took on raising him. When Ash turned 6, Griffith got called up to serve in the army and shipped off to Vietnam, Iraq in the anime adaptation, while his father looked after him. At 7 years old, Ash was violated by his Little League coach. When his father went to report the sexual assault, the police refused to believe his rapist was guilty since the guy was considered a big shot in the community. His father told Ash that next time, he should just let the assault happen, but then asked to be paid for it. After suffering through several more attacks by the same man, Ash grabbed his father's gun without permission and killed his rapist when he was only 8 years old. The police discovered the bones of children in the basement, and the case blew up into a major scandal. His attacker became notorious as the Bluebeard of Cape Cod. While Ash was not found guilty legally, he became the subject of endless gossip throughout the small town. His father decided to send him away to live with his aunt, but before that could happen, Ash ran away from home. Living as a homeless child, he got captured by men who trafficked children for prostitution. he was sent to work at Club Cod, a child trafficking operation disguised as a restaurant owned by Mafia Don Dino Golzine. At Club Cod, he learned how to charm customers with his natural charisma. Eventually, he caught the attention of Marvin Crosby, who sold him to Dino. Dino decided to keep him as his personal pet, or slave. Under Golzine's control, he got cultured and trained to fit in with the upper class. This meant tasting different types of wine, learning proper table manners, and receiving an exceptional education. His education also included combat training in both hand-to-hand fighting and firearms from some of the world's most respected instructors, including one named Blanca. At 14, he fell in love with a girl, but she was murdered before their relationship could develop because people thought she was his girlfriend. When he reached 15, he got sent to juvenile detention for killing 3 people. During his time there, he met Shorter Wong, who became his close friend and helped him bring together various gang territories of Lower Manhattan. Around 15 or 16, he tracked down his brother Griffin in a rundown hospital for Vietnam veterans and decided to take care of him. By 17, he had managed to unite many gangs under his leadership and became both a feared and respected leader in Manhattan. He inspired fierce loyalty among his followers, but showed absolutely no mercy to anyone who betrayed him. Lucy. Kaide, better known as Lucy, was born as the child of the very first Diclonius. The Diclonius are a dangerous new species marked by their horns, pink hair, and invisible arms called vectors. Her mother was human, but with the rare ability to give birth to Diclonius capable of reproducing. She was essentially the origin of the virus that spread their existence. The story never reveals much about Kaide's parents, but what shaped her life was her belief that both of them had abandoned her. She grew up thinking that they had left her to die in a field as an infant. What she never knew until much later was that only her father tried to get rid of her. Her mother discovered what he had done and spent the rest of her life searching for her. That search ended tragically when she was captured by Chief Kakuzawa, forced to bear his child, and eventually took her own life. Meanwhile, Kaide grew up believing her parents had discarded her, fueling years of resentment and violent impulses. She was raised in an orphanage after being rescued as a baby, but life there wasn't any kinder. The staff largely ignored her, and the other children constantly bullied her, mocking her horns, calling her an ox. She understood that they were lashing out because they were abandoned too, but that didn't lessen the cruelty. She tried to stay unreactive, hoping they'd eventually stop, but it only made her stand out more and gave them reason to keep tormenting her. As she grew older, her vectors began to appear, though she had no idea what they were at the time. During those years, she discovered a stray dog in the wood near the orphanage and treated it as her first real friend. She secretly fed it most of her own meals to keep it alive. Her fragile sense of companionship shattered when one of the girls at the orphanage betrayed her trust. After Kaide confided about the puppy, the bullies learned of it and dragged the animal into the classroom. In front of her, they killed the dog in brutal display. Seeing the girl who had exposed her pet smiling through feigned tears pushed Kaide over the edge. For the first time, she unleashed her vectors, slaughtering the bullies in a violent outburst. Afterward, she buried the dog and ran away, with the orphanage assuming that she had been abducted by whoever murdered the other children. In the mountains, she crossed paths with Kouta, a boy visiting the area on vacation. Despite her violent instincts, she connected with him and found comfort in his company. He even gave her a hat to help hide her horns. Still, her darker urges didn't go away. At night, she murdered families and used their homes for shelter. Their friendship collapsed during the Banbori Matsuri festival, when she saw Kouta with his cousin Yuka. She mistook the girl as his lover and she broke down. Overwhelmed by murderous instincts, she killed festival goers in what looked like a bombing. Determined to destroy everything connected to Kouta, she boarded a train and slaughtered his father and sister Kane. Kouta survived but was left broken as she fled. Over the next 5 years, she stayed under the radar, but survived through violence. Many of her victims died from sudden internal injuries caused by her vectors, and she used crowds of mourners as opportunities to infect men with the Diclonius virus. During this time, she met Aiko Takada, a lonely girl who also suffered from an abusive home. They became close, but when Aiko sacrificed herself to save Kaide during a government attack, Kaide was captured by a Kurama. Learning of Aiko's death deepened her hatred, and she swore to destroy Kurama's world in return. She was imprisoned at the Diclonius Research Institute for 3 years. It was there that she gained the name Lucy, given to her by researchers who quickly learned to fear her. She earned a reputation as a killer, with guards and staff staying far away from her containment area. When an accident during a transfer gave her the chance, she escaped. Using her vector, she killed guards and tore her way through the facility until a sniper shot her in the head. The bullet struck her helmet instead of her skull, knocking her unconscious and sending her into the sea. She washed ashore on Yugihama Beach near Kamakura, where by chance she was found by Kouta and Yuka. The head injury left her with amnesia, stripping away her violent persona and leaving behind a childlike innocent personality. Only able to say new, she was given that name by the two and taken into Kouta's new home, Maple House. Chise Hatori. Chise Hatori was born with something most people would never understand, the ability called the Sight, which lets her perceive the supernatural. She was the only daughter of Chika and Yuki Hatori, and for a while she actually lived a happy childhood. Both of her parents had the same gift, so she wasn't completely alone in experiencing things beyond the human world, but being a slave beggy complicated everything. That rare nature made her a magnet for spirits, both benevolent and dangerous. While her father was still around, he managed to keep the darker ones away, protecting her as best as he could. Things changed when he suddenly left, taking her little brother with him. After that, her mother was left on her own, overwhelmed by the endless spiritual entities that gathered around their home. The pressure pushed her mother to a breaking point. In one desperate moment, she tried to strangle Chise, but she stopped herself before going through with it. Not long after, she chose another way to escape her suffering. She ended her own life. That left Chise completely alone. Her extended family didn't want the burden either. None of them could deal with the strange occurrences that followed her, so she was passed from one relative to another like unwanted baggage. With every rejection, her sense of isolation grew heavier, and eventually she slipped into a deep depression. At her lowest, she even tried to end her life by jumping off the roof of her school. Before she could, a man stopped her. Instead of urging her to keep going with life, he offered another path. She could sell herself to someone who might actually care for her. At the time, she already knew she was a slave beggy, but she didn't really understand what that meant or why anyone would value her. The man took her under his wing briefly, teaching her how to read and speak English. In an extra chapter, it's mentioned that he deliberately made her look dirty and neglected so she gained more sympathy at auction. That led her to a moment that would change everything. She was put up for sale, resigned to the idea that maybe she could find at least a place to belong. During the auction, a towering figure walked onto the stage, Elias Ainsworth, a mage with an inhuman appearance. Without hesitation, he bid an enormous sum of £5 million and bought her. Elias explained that she was both a slave beggy and someone with the sight, and that made her valuable. For Chise, hearing that stirred painful memories of her past, of being isolated, rejected, and treated as an outcast because of those very traits. She broke down, but Elias told her that one day she learned to be grateful for her abilities. With that, he cast a teleportation spell and whisked her away to his home, a quiet place tucked into the countryside outside London, where her life is about to change. Akaza. Demon Slayer has a habit of flipping the script with its villains. You might despise them at first, only for a tragic backstory to suddenly reframe everything. And that's exactly what happens with Akaza. When he showed up in the first movie and killed Rengoku, fans instantly labeled him as one of the most hated demons in the series. But in the second movie, his story as a human takes center stage, and it changes the way that people see him. Akaza was once a boy named Hakuji, born in the slums of Edo. He grew up with a father who was sick and frail, but also the most important person in his life. Desperate to buy medicine, Hakuji resorted to pickpocketing. He got caught 3 times, each time beaten and branded with tattoos by the magistrate, who warned that next time he'd lose his arms. The man mocked him as a demon child, but Hakuji didn't care. He even accepted the name, pointing to his fangs as proof. When he came home after his 3rd arrest, a villager delivered devastating news. His father had taken his own life, leaving a letter behind saying he didn't want to live off medicine bought through dishonest means. The man wanted his son to live a better life, even if it meant leaving him behind. For Hakuji, the loss was crushing. Branded as a criminal, carrying tattoos that marked him forever, and no home to return to, he was eventually banished from Edo. With nothing left, he lashed out at the world around him, fighting anyone he could. He earned a reputation for violence, and one day, after nearly beating 7 grown men to death, he caught the attention of Keizo, a dojo master. Instead of turning him away, Keizo challenged him. To Hakuji's surprise, he was quickly defeated. Rather than holding a grudge, Keizo brought him into his life, and that's when he met Koyuki, Keizo's sickly daughter. Her mother had drowned herself out of despair, and Keizo was stretched thin trying to care for her while working odd jobs. Hakuji took over as her caretaker, already used to nursing his own father. It wasn't easy at first. He felt awkward when she suddenly cried for no reason, but he slowly gave her something to hold on to. Without realizing it, his words about next year at a fireworks show gave her hope that she hadn't felt in a long time. Trouble wasn't far though. A rival Kenjutsu dojo was trying to force Keizo out and ruin his reputation. They even went after Koyuki, leaving her outside the dojo in an attempt to shame them. Enraged, Keizo and Hakuji fought back, Together, they defeated 9 men, and Hakuchi's finishing move, his bell splitter technique that shattered a sword with his bare hands, left even the enemy awestruck. They backed off and promised never to target the dojo again. 2 years passed, and life seemed to finally stabilize. Koyuki's health improved. She could walk and help around the house, and the dojo grew under Keizo's guidance. He trained in the Soryu style, and became not only Keizo's pupil, but also his trusted successor. Keizo eventually offered him the dojo and Koyuki's hand in marriage. Embarrassed but deeply moved, he accepted. He vowed to protect them both for the rest of his life. During a festival, Koyuki asked if he truly accepted her despite her past, and he reassured her, reaffirming the promise he had made. It looked like he had finally found a future worth fighting for, but jealousy destroyed everything. The heir of the rival dojo, unable to accept defeat, poisoned the well from which Keizo and Koyuki drank. While Hakuchi was away visiting his father's grave, both of them died. When he returned and learned the truth, he was consumed by rage. He stormed the rival dojo and killed every single member, 67 people in total, with his bare hands, leaving their bodies unrecognizable. The massacre drew Muzan Kibutsuji's attention. Muzan, disappointed that it was a human and not a demon capable of such brutality, decided to make him one of the 12 Kazuki. Broken, with nothing left to protect, he accepted. From then on, he became Akaza. Once he turned into a demon, his memories of being human faded away. All that remained was his hunger for strength, a drive he didn't fully understand. Even so, there was one line he never crossed. He refused to harm or eat women. His true past only resurfaced much later, during the fierce battle at the Affinity Castle against Tanjiro and Giyu, when he finally remembered the life he had lost. Tomura Shigaraki. Tomura Shigaraki, born Tenko Shimura, became the leader of the League of Villains and one of the most dangerous figures in My Hero Academia. He made his first big appearance during the USJ arc, but his story started long before that. He was the youngest son of Kotaro and Nao Shimura, with an elder sister named Hana. The family lived together in a house Kotaro had built, along with Nao's parents. From the start, Tenko's life was tied to All for One. The villain stole the quirk factor he inherited from his parents, leaving him quirkless. Even his birth had been manipulated. All for One convinced Kotaro to have another child, setting the stage for Tenko to become his vessel, with a will warped enough to one day steal All for One. As a child, Tenko loved heroes, but Kotaro hated everything about them. Any mention of heroes brought harsh scolding, and the boy quickly learned to hide his admiration. His mother and grandparents comforted him when they could, but no one ever stood up to Kotaro. When he was 5, he saved some friends from being run over by a truck. On his way home, a frail old man appeared, secretly All for One in disguise, and walked him home. During that moment, All for One passed a new quirk onto him: decay. Back at the house, Kotaro punished him again, this time leaving him outside without food or water until he apologized. Now begged him to show some mercy, but Kotaro insisted he was preventing his son from chasing a dream that would only bring him misery. Tenko's allergies grew worse, though no one realizes the scratching came from his quirk awakening. His mother tried to comfort him, asking if he wanted to be a hero. He admitted he did, but wondered if his father hated him for it. She told him no, though Kotaro's attitude said otherwise. Trying to lift his spirits, Hana showed him their father's office. Inside was an old photo of Kotaro as a child with his mother, Nana Shimura, the same Nana who had once been a hero. Learning this filled him with joy. Hana even encouraged him, saying they could be heroes together someday. For a moment he felt supported, though that moment didn't last. Kotaro discovered that they had been in his office. Hana, terrified, blamed it all on Tenko. Furious, Kotaro beat his son while Tenko's itching worsened. As he struck him, Kotaro ranted about heroes, calling Nana a monster who abandoned her family. The rest of the family watched but didn't step in. After the beating, Tenko was left outside again. He clung to the family dog Mon, crying and scratching until the itch became unbearable. That's when his quirk finally erupted. Without realizing what was happening, he disintegrated Mon in his arms. Horrified, he thought they were being attacked by a villain. Hana soon came out to apologize. He tried to warn her, but the shock left him unable to speak. She noticed something was wrong, saw remnants of the dog, and screamed. When she tried to run, he reached for her, and she crumbled in the dust in his hands. Watching his sister die traumatized him further. His grandparents and mother rushed out next. Full of anger at their silence whenever Kotaro abused him, he let his hatred spread through his quirk, decaying the yard itself. Still, part of him begged them for help. Now tried to comfort him, but she disintegrated before she could reach him. His grandparents soon follow. Kotaro arrived last, staring in shock at the destruction. Tenko begged him for help, but his father only lashed out at a pair of pruning shears, striking him across the face. This time, the boy snapped. Overcome with rage, he grabbed his father and unleashed his quirk fully, killing him and destroying the house. For the first time, he felt a dark satisfaction at ending the abuse. Now orphaned, he wandered the streets alone. He was disoriented, traumatized, and even desperate for someone to save him. Passerbys ignored him, disturbed by his appearance. Even an old woman who tried to help quickly backed away, saying a hero or politician would come instead. Believing no one would save him because of what he had done, he sank deeper into despair. That's when All for One appeared again. He found Tenko homeless under a bridge, embraced him, and whispered that society had failed him. Taking him in, he began molding him into his successor. Dr. Kyudai Garaki presented him with the severed hands of his family, which sent the boy into shock, but All for One told him to keep them as a way of channeling his emotions. He explained that Tenko's constant inching came from suppressing his destructive impulses, and that he didn't need to control them. One day, after being beaten by thugs, Tenko wanted to kill them but held back. All for One reassured him that morality and conscience were just illusions, urging him to embrace what he truly wanted. When asked, Tenko admitted he wanted to kill the men. To prove it, he disintegrated one of the hands he held. Satisfied, All for One told him that he already knew what to do. Tenko confronted the thugs again, this time wearing his family's hands. He killed them without hesitation. The act disgusted him, but it also left him calm, as if he finally found release. Watching from above, All for One remarked that Tenko's memories weren't gone, they had only been buried beneath his rage. The hands, he explained, would keep his emotions in check and tie him to the past. Back at their hideout, All for One rewarded him with 5 new hands, 4 from the men he killed and a 5th as a bonus to replace the one he destroyed. From that day on, Tenko was reborn as Tomura Shigaraki. The name symbolized warning and death, while Shigaraki was taken from All for One's own surname. Under his new identity, Tomura was raised to embrace destruction, trained to inherit the League of Villains, and shaped into the symbol of fear All for One had planned from the start. Hänsel and Gretel. Hänsel and Gretel were a pair of Romanian twin assassins infamous in Roanapur for their twisted methods. They were brought in by Veracino, the leader of the Sicilian mafia in the city, to take out Balalakia and Hotel Moscow. The twins' lives began in a small village in the Carpathian Mountains. Like many children of their generation, they were placed in a state-run orphanage under Nicolae Ceausescu's rule. His government had banned abortion to increase birth rates, but the country's collapsing economy left families unable to care for their children. Thousands were abandoned to overcrowded orphanages. When Ceausescu's regime collapsed, countless orphans, including the twins, were taken by criminal groups. They ended up in Sicily, where the mafia forced them into a brutal life of exploitation. They were used as sex slaves and made to participate in pedophilic snuff films. Sometimes they were forced to kill other children. Other times, they were victims themselves. Surrounded by constant violence and abuse, they grew into sadistic, unstable killers. They developed the belief that taking lives prolonged their own. This came from the survival system imposed on them as kids. Kill or be beaten. Kill or be next. Over time, murder became not just survival, but something they found pleasure in. Their trauma also warped their relationship with one another. They acted on incestuous impulses, especially in heightened moments like killings or close brushes with death. The two weren't just broken, they were also dangerously clever. They could manipulate situations to their advantage, whether it was sending a Thai orphan to distract bounty hunters or using money to divert Edda's attention. They also displayed another layer of instability, dissociative identity disorder. The titles of Hänsel and Gretel weren't tied to one twin, but switched between them, as if they shared and exchanged the roles. Despite everything, there were glimpses of talent buried underneath the horror. Gretel, for example, had a striking singing voice, shown when she sang for rock, but their outlook on the world was bleak. They rejected the idea of God, convinced that no higher power existed to help children like them. As assassins, their weaponry matched their brutality. Gretel carried a concealed M1918A2 bar hidden under a blanket, while Hänsel favored a sharp battle axe and 2 revolvers hidden in his jacket. Acrobatic Silky. Acrobatic Silky was a yokai driven by one thing, her desperate need to be called Mother. Like every yokai in the series, she started out human, but her path to becoming a spirit was filled with pain. In life, she was a woman drowning in debt. To keep herself and her daughter afloat, she juggled multiple jobs, working as a janitor, a convenience store clerk, and even selling her body when there was no other option. Despite the constant struggle, her daughter was everything to her. With what little money she could spare, she once bought her a dress for her birthday, hoping to give her some joy on her special day. That moment of love ended in tragedy. The men she owed money to showed up at her home. They beat her, bloodied her, and kidnapped her daughter, She tried to fight back despite her injuries, but a shard of glass cut her eye before the men knocked her down. When she gained consciousness a few minutes later, she chased after a van as far as her bloody body could carry her, but she fell, helplessly, watching as her child disappeared from sight. Broken by despair, she performed at one final dance on a rooftop before leaping to her death. Her last thoughts were of her daughter. Her spirit wandered the city for years. She forgot the details of her past life, but deep inside she felt an unbearable emptiness, knowing something vital had been taken from her. One day, a little girl named Ira Shiratori mistook her for her late mother. Ira's father quickly led her away, but that tiny moment sparked something inside the spirit. She became convinced that she was Ira's mother, and that obsession twisted her into the yokai known as Acrobatic Silky. For the next 10 years, she lingered in the shadows, watching Ira from afar, and waiting for the chance to claim her as her child. That chance came when Ira confronted Momo and Okarun in an abandoned building. When Okarun tried to save her, Acrobatic Silky swallowed him whole. Ira refused to call her mother, which only enraged her more, and she swallowed Ira too. Blaming Momo for Ira's disobedience, she turned on her next. But before being taken, Momo managed to pull strands of hair from her body. Inside, Momo used Ira's lighter to ignite those strands. The flames forced Acrobatic Silky to expel them, giving Momo and Okarun a chance to fight back. Together, they managed to bring her down. Just as they thought it was over, Turbo Granny dropped the devastating news. Ira was dead. But instead of striking again, Acrobatic Silky rose with an unexpected offer. She wanted to save Ira by transferring her own aura into the girl. During this process, Momo caught a glimpse of her tragic past, seeing the pain of a mother she once was. The transfer worked, bringing Ira back, but it left Acrobatic Silky fading away. Without her aura, she couldn't move on peacefully. Turbo Granny explained that she would simply vanish as if she never existed. As her body disintegrated, memories of her real daughter returned. She broke down in regret, mourning her failure as a mother. At that moment, Ira ran towards her, embraced her, and called her mother, and told her that she loved her. With those words, Acrobatic Silky finally found peace. She achieved nirvana, and Ira wished for her and her lost child to be reunited in a better place beyond.